There's a pattern that shouldn't exist. Over 40 young men across 11 states, all college students, all athletic, all popular, all found dead in rivers after a night out. And at many of the sites, the same symbol painted nearby, a smiley face. Law enforcement calls them accidental drownings. But two retired NYPD detectives spent 15 years investigating these cases and came to a different conclusion. They believe these deaths are connected murders. February 1997, Patrick McNeill, a 21-year-old Fordham University student, went out with friends to a Manhattan bar. Security cameras show him leaving alone around 2 in the morning. He never made it home. 2 months later, his body surfaced 12 miles downriver near the Brooklyn waterfront. The medical examiner ruled it a drowning, manner undetermined. But the detectives assigned to the case, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, noticed something wrong. McNeill's body showed faint ligature marks. Toxicology suggested he'd been drugged. His positioning in the water was inconsistent with typical drowning victims. Then, more bodies appeared. 2 more young men in New York City, both found in the same area as McNeill, both after nights of drinking. All ruled accidental drownings. Gannon retired from the NYPD in 2001, but couldn't let the case go. He partnered with Duarte and they began private investigation work. That's when they saw a CNN report about similar deaths in the Midwest. The pattern was unmistakable. College-aged white men, athletic and academically successful, last seen leaving bars or parties while intoxicated. Bodies found days or weeks later in nearby rivers or lakes. All ruled accidental drownings. Between 1997 and 2017, investigators counted over 40 such deaths across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. The victims had no connection to each other. They attended different universities, lived in different states, disappeared years apart. But there was one connection no one expected.
In 2006, Gannon and Duarte traveled to the locations where bodies had been discovered. They brought in Dr. Lee Gilbertson, a criminal justice professor who specialized in gang activity. What they found changed everything. At site after site, they discovered graffiti. Not random tags, but specific symbols. The most common, a smiley face. Sometimes crude, sometimes elaborate, but always near where the bodies entered the water or where they were found. The graffiti appeared on bridge supports, retaining walls, buildings near riverbanks. In at least a dozen cases, the smiley face was present, sometimes accompanied by other symbols the investigators believed were gang-related signatures. January 2017. Dakota James, a 23-year-old from Pittsburgh, left a downtown bar after midnight. Security cameras captured him walking through Katz Plaza toward an alley that led to 3 bridges crossing the Allegheny River.
Then he vanished. Not one camera on any of the 3 bridges captured him. He simply disappeared. 40 days later, a woman walking her dog spotted a body in the Ohio River, 10 miles downstream. It was Dakota. The medical examiner ruled it an accidental drowning. But the investigators found problems with that conclusion. Dakota's body showed minimal decomposition for someone supposedly in water for 40 days. He had GHB, a date rape drug, in his system. And near where his body was found, 11 smiley faces were spray painted on a bridge. His family refused to accept the accidental drowning ruling. They contacted Gannon's team. The investigators believe these deaths are the work of an organized group,
possibly cells operating independently across different cities. Their theory: victims are targeted after leaving bars, drugged with substances like GHB, abducted, and killed before their bodies are placed in water to mask evidence. Criminal profilers have called the theory implausible. They argue the evidence doesn't fit known patterns of serial killers. The victims are spread across too wide an area, too long a time span. Smiley faces are common graffiti, they say. Finding them near water isn't significant. The Center for Homicide Research examined 40 cases in 2012 and concluded they were alcohol-related accidents. Their report noted that young men ages 18 to 34 are statistically the most likely to binge drink and suffer unintentional injuries. Drowning fits that pattern. But Gannon, Duarte, and Gilbertson remain convinced. They've identified what they believe are over 70 connected cases now. They point to the specificity of the graffiti, not just any smiley face, but particular styles and accompanying symbols that appear repeatedly. They cite witness reports of suspicious vehicles following victims. They reference the toxicology reports showing GHB, a drug commonly used in sexual assault and abduction. They question why so many bodies show minimal injuries if they fell drunk into rivers and were battered by currents and debris. And they ask why so many families report their sons seem targeted. Dakota James's family described him as cautious. Patrick McNeill's friends said he wasn't that drunk when he left. These weren't reckless kids stumbling into rivers, the investigators argue. These were deliberate abductions. For the families, the official explanations don't bring closure. Matthew Whitmer's parents have lived in limbo since 2007, when their son vanished near the Golden Gate Bridge. A jump was witnessed that morning, but the body was never recovered. They don't know if it was Matthew. Kyle Gamboa's parents watched him skip school and drive to the Golden Gate Bridge, where he jumped in 2013. He was 18. His death was clearly suicide, they know. But they joined advocacy groups because they believe some of these bridge deaths aren't what they seem. The common thread among these families is doubt. The investigations felt rushed. The conclusions felt predetermined. When they demanded answers, they were told their sons were drunk and made fatal mistakes. End of story. Bodies continue to appear in rivers across the Northeast and Midwest. Young men still vanish after nights out. Most cases are quickly ruled accidental drownings. In January 2024, the Golden Gate Bridge completed installation of suicide prevention barriers. But that addresses only one location. The rivers where these men disappear have no barriers, no cameras, often no witnesses.
Gannon's team believes the group, if it exists, has become more sophisticated. They claim cells communicate on the dark web, coordinate across cities, and avoid leaving obvious evidence. Members rotate in and out, making it impossible to identify a single perpetrator. Law enforcement maintains there is no evidence of an organized killing operation. The pattern, they insist, is explained by statistics. Young men drink heavily, misjudge their proximity to water, and tragically drown. So what's the truth? Are over 40 deaths across 20 years the work of accidental drowning, as every official investigation has concluded? Or is there a pattern everyone's missing? The smiley face graffiti exists. That's documented. The victims fit a profile. That's undeniable. The presence of date rape drugs in multiple toxicology reports is confirmed. The questions families have about rushed investigations and inconsistent evidence are real. But the FBI, local police departments, forensic experts, and criminal profilers all reject the serial killer theory. They point to data showing young men are statistically likely to drown after drinking. They note that smiley faces are common graffiti found everywhere, not just near these deaths. The investigators counter that this is exactly why the killers haven't been caught. The deaths look accidental. The evidence is washed away. The victims are young men who'd been drinking, making their deaths easy to dismiss. What remains are grieving families, unanswered questions, and a debate that won't end. Because every few months, another young man disappears after a night out, and days or weeks later, his body surfaces in a nearby river. The bridges are still there, the rivers keep flowing, and the argument continues about what's really happening in the water.